So I'm just going to introduce myself really quickly. I'm Andrea Shaw. I'm the head of talent strategy and transformation at Eightfold. I joined Eightfold a year ago. Actually, today's my anniversary from last year, my first day. Yes, thank you. So I joined a year ago. Prior to that, I came from American Express. I had a 25-year career there. My last role, I worked in every organization, but my last role was the head of global talent acquisition. I implemented Eightfold and led a 2-year transformation. And the spoiler alert is I saw such great enhancements from Eightfold, I decided to join them. So I spend my time today spending time with talent leaders, talking about AI and how it helps them support their strategies and talent priorities. So I'm going to introduce Marcus. We're really fortunate to have him here today. So as Lahia said, Marcus is the partner at Mercer, the head of talent and workforce transformation.
It's about a 4-foot-long business.
Yes. And even prior to that, he also played a role as an advisor to talent leaders at Korn Ferry and also at Reed, correct?
Mm.
So I'll let you maybe talk a little bit. Well, one other thing I want to add. So I was talking to Marcus yesterday. So he's still building his skills and his skill portfolio. He just most recently picked up scuba diving. So we'll let Marcus talk about his experience as an advisor and maybe a little bit about his new scuba diving skills.
Thank you.
I didn't tell you I was going to
say. Look, I think, I work for Mercer. Those that don't know Mercer, we work in a range of fields. I come from the human capital division. So I've worked with a lot of organisations in the last 25 years to try and help them execute their talent plans. And I want to pick up on Nico's comment at the last session about putting people front and centre. Now, to do that, and because we're the last session of the day, even with the best will in the world, you're probably starting to feel a little bit tired because you've digested all this information, right? So here's what we're going to do, just to kind of bring this alive a little bit. I want you to just take a moment to think, not what your job and organisation demands from you, but just take a moment to think, when you go into the workplace or when you go and do your work at home, wherever it is, what's the one thing that you demand from your employer? Right? It could be money. It could be the buzz of innovation. It could be, going to meet new people or learn new things. What's the one thing you demand as a human being from your employer? That you demand, not that they demand from you. Take a moment. You got it? Right, now we're going to increase the energy level in the room. I want you to stand up, turn to the person next to you, and we're going to spend just a minute talking to each other about, as a human being, this is what I want from the workplace. Go.
How much time are you giving him? Okay. Okay. Let's come back together. You've got networking after. You can finish your stories after. You can do it after. It's okay. It's all right.
My God, I've unleashed the beast here. Okay. Now, when we talk about human capital or human resources, for me, although I've been doing this job for 25 years, I think the biggest shift, not just this biggest shift has occurred in this pandemic and post-pandemic. Because I think before the pandemic, when we talked about human resources or human capital, what we focused on was resources or capital. What is it as an organisation that I want our staff to do? And I'm going to tell them what to do. And this is where I need you to be aligned. And what I think the pandemic has really left as a legacy is the human part. You see how much energy that was just released in that session, okay? I haven't got time to go around the room and ask all the answers, but all the answers that came up in that room would have been probably different. So it's really now what I've found is that when we do work with workforce, whether it's the C-suite down to the ground floor, whether it's gig workers or full-time employees, what I'm now starting to notice is that organisations, and when I work with them, they now start to realise that the relationship between the organisation and the employee has now been rebalanced. That now, if you turn to me and say, it's a 3% pot and high performance is 3.5%, you should be motivated. No, I'll leave for 10 or 15% down the road. If I don't get what I want as a human being, I want to move somewhere else. And that's because people's values and what people want has come much more to the surface now, and people are much more demanding of their employers around what they need. So what we're seeing is that all the things that happen in the diversity of a workforce has come much more to the fore. So maybe I have elderly parents and they're not very well, and I want to make sure I have the time to spend with them. Maybe I have a family and I used to jump on a plane. I used to do that at least, a week, a month, and now I just don't want to do it. Now I've moved to the coast and I'm living in North Devon, and why on earth would I want to come to London on a stinky train and pay £50 for trains and food and all the rest of it? Don't want it. And if you think you're going to make me, I'm going to go somewhere else. And I've never seen that in the market until now. So when organisations come to me and say, look, we're thinking of, doing X, Y, and Z, the lens of the employee value proposition that appeals to those diversity of reasons that have come up is massive. And actually, when we think about careers, the reason that this kind of stuff around Eightfold does is really important is because now it's less about the organisation telling me what is important and telling me what I should value and telling me what my career is. Now I'm starting to grab hold of what I want and make demands of the organisation. And that's a massive change that's happened. So every time I work with clients, and I work with clients across predominantly EMEA at the moment, but some are more global, and whether I'm working with the top team or I'm doing workshops with employees, that's the theme that's come through. So for me, it's about having personas to think about overlaying on all your plans straight away. Families, 20-somethings trying to buy a home, people who are just at the end of their career and they just want pure satisfaction from the workplace, etc., etc. All the different personas that come up are now the lens that I'm finding being put onto talent management strategies. And being able to offer career paths that are more democratized, that are driven by the employee, really helps with creating that employee value proposition. Now, the world isn't just driven by employees. It's never going to be a boundaryless existence, otherwise we'd all just learn French cooking and never get any work done. So there's still employers that need things from us. You speak a lot to talent executives. What do you think employers are now looking at post-pandemic world from their talent?
Yeah, so what you just described is a shifting of, power, right? So right now employees have a lot of the power and influence. On top of that, as I'm talking to talent leaders, they're also looking at other demands that they're facing, right? So I think we've talked about this a lot, but digitization, right, is now imperative across the organization. And to enable digitization, you need the right skills. And so I kind of looked up, I Googled digital skills, and to boil it down to the simplest terms, found this definition. So it's the ability to find, evaluate, use, and share data and create content using digital devices such as computers and smartphones. So that's very simple description digitization. Well, in today's world, that impacts everything, like everything. So digitization is impacting every function. So if you just think about that description, it's every function. It's operations, your ability to really kind of service your customers in a better way. It is, servicing, managing your product development, marketing, creating, digital contents. It's finance, like really kind of being able to understand the business impacts really in a timely way. And it's HR. Now it's HR too. Like every function needs these skills, and it's critical to survive in the future. So I think what they're realizing is they're seeing this pressure. And then on top of that, the other thing we're seeing in Eightfold data is there's also technology events that are happening in different industries. So if you look at telecom, right, 5G is a new requirement that they have, that they have to build the skills for. If you look at pharmaceuticals, right, it's biotech become really front and center, growing very rapidly in terms of a skill set in pharmaceutical companies. If you look at semiconductors, they have new technology, trying to build new skills for the new technology. And if you look at oil and gas, right, it's renewable energy. So on top of digitizing their skills, they've got this other pressure of other technologies that's appearing in each of their verticals. So there's a lot of pressure, and I think as change agents, into your organizations, it's just linking. So I think at the very top, everyone understands this, that this is critical, and they want to move the direction of that business. But linking the fact that you need important skills to do that becomes really important. And our data is showing that companies are not ready. Right, we've done a lot of analysis, and Eightfold, when you take a look at the data, we looked at the US as an example. Let's just take the banking industry as an example. We took a look at 700,000 workers in the banking industry, and we took a look at also 25,000 workers in fintech. And we took a look at what are the skills compositions across those across those organizations. And what we can see is in the space of IT, like the fastest growing skills, fintechs have 55% of their organization skills represented in IT. Guess what? The banks are at 15%. So you have this emergence of, the Robin Hoods and Stripe and really going strong in terms of gaining share in those industries, and banks need to catch up. So that's the added pressure we're seeing. And I think a lot of companies that we're talking to realize that and are really starting to think about workforce planning and how do you make this happen at scale across the organization, and AI is the solution, right, to do that. So that's the pressure that they're seeing and looking for ideas. I'm curious, though, your thoughts on the future of the workforce. What do you think? Where do you think that's heading?
So, so there's been a lot of themes coming up today about AI and technology and people working remotely. There's been a lot of information to absorb about changes in the labour markets, increases in vacancy rates, job-based thinking, which is the legacy of what we've inherited at the moment, right? I mean, what we found as a kind of, it's very difficult to know how to start tackling what is we'd call a skills ecosystem, yeah? You've got a job-based ecosystem, an organizational-based ecosystem where we've got Lego blocks which are jobs. But everyone sees the logic for skills, but they haven't quite cracked the code. How do we set ourselves up as a skills ecosystem? And there's two things I'd say about that and where future work's going. First one is no organization that I know of has cracked this. They all see the business case for moving to skills, but they're all on a journey to get there. They start in different places, their destination is different, and they have different methods of getting there, but no one organization I've seen yet has cracked it. They're all trying. And what I think helps with this journey is less about looking at other organisations and trying to benchmark. That's the question I often get is, I know an organisation who, for instance, two pharmaceutical organisations that I know, and one looks at the other and says that organisation has cracked it, because what they've done is, in order to promote a skills set of thinking, in the grades, what we've done is we've introduced some increments, okay? And what we do is we pay people and promote them within those increments. Instead of being a grade 1, you can be a 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E. And every time you pick up a new skill, you can move up a grade. And actually, we think that's great, because the other thing is, it means you're getting a promotion. So people who are really keen to get promoted really quickly, you can get promotion and you get a little increment. And this organisation said, I think they've cracked it. And we went to that organisation, which is another client of ours, and they turned around and said, we wish we'd never implemented it. It's bureaucratic, it creates a culture of expectation. They're just picking up skills for the sake of skills. But it's so funny when you look at other organisations and you look from the outside in, you think they've cracked it and they haven't. Where we start the journey with organisations is we ask them to think about work, okay? So a practical example of this is a lot of organisations are developing data analytics, okay? It's quite a common theme that comes up. We're getting more and more data, we need a better data analytics function, and we're trying to recruit data analytics people, but there's a smaller pool of increasing mediocrity that costs 15% more, we just can't find them. And if you just think about the skills and work of data analytics, I'm going to put something out there that might be a bit controversial. You might think it's about the ability to just manipulate data and work with, say, spreadsheets. And the other thing is about telling a story with that data. So maybe being able to tell a story in PowerPoint. Now, I'm simplifying the job, but I'm trying to break the jobs down into work and tasks and skills. Now, rather than advertising and looking for data analytics, the people I know in the workforce that do that really, really well are EAs, PAs, and secretaries for their directors. Now, wouldn't it be fantastic if you could actually highlight work and skills and actually have a piece of software maybe that could turn around and say your career path that you've never thought of in a traditional sense is to move from being an EA to doing data analytics. And why don't you put your hand up to do that? That'd be awesome, wouldn't it? I mean, just think about like someone coming up to you or you seeing that that is a career path that you could do, which is non-traditional. Now, I said we do a lot of work around bringing talent ecosystems alive because, yes, there's gaps. Yes, you've got to close those gaps. Yes, you've got to reward people and put all those pieces together. You've got to move them around. There's got to be a flow of that talent. And you can bet you the bottom dollar if that EA is any good, the director is not going to release that person. Yeah? Because if they're good, they're mine. So what we found is there's kind of 4 stages that when we look at the future of work, we try and break it down in 4 ways. First, we look at the work and the skills and not the jobs. Second, we've talked a lot about technology today, and traditional views of technology is about automation and replacement of people. But now you're seeing technology which augments human performance. So first is the work and skills. Second is to look at the technology to say, does the technology enhance performance, change the nature of what the work is being asked, or if it is just simply data checking, maybe it does still automate what used to be a human task. Thirdly then, ask yourself what sort of employment best fits those jobs. Fixed roles, gig workers, contractors, outsourced, they're all up in the air at the moment, but they're all sensible questions to ask. Do you need to keep your business model all full-time employees? You don't necessarily need to. And then once you ask yourself, the 4th stage is how do you move people around? How do you make it flow to make that happen? And those 4 principles are the ones that when we try and get organisations to rethink their ecosystems, we get them to think about those 4 principles. Now, we're coming up to time, unfortunately, and talk too much, as usual.
No,
I wonder what people have taken away from today.
I don't know. Let's find out.
Do you want to ask the question or me?
No, you can ask the question.
You sure?
I think you should.
Okay. All right. So this session aside, well, this includes a session if you want. I love coming to sessions like today because there's huge amount to absorb, huge, from an actually huge diverse range of speakers, okay? So here's a quick question for you, for anyone that likes to volunteer with the roving mic. 9 till 4 today. What's the one thing, if you're going to synthesize everything from today, what's the one thing you want to take away from today and try out back in the workplace? We thought we'd end today with that question. Anyone like to volunteer what their thought is? Thank you.
So for me, I think talent marketplace is important. We learned that the challenge is really getting the managers to publish, because if we do, people come to publish jobs and gigs. And within that, I think it was very insightful to learn about a specific lens about perhaps as a manager, we look for that spike in strength and put an ecosystem around people to say the weaknesses will make them irrelevant. That's my summary of the day.
Good.
That's great.
Thank you for going first. Anyone else? Excellent.
I think the challenge of how can employers put a value on the skills in their organization to help them make the arguments to be better at managing skills.
Yep. Good.
Can I ask you a question? I was talking earlier about, digital skills and the demand for digital skills. Does that underscore at all for like your leadership in your organization? Like, is that a priority that shows up that really highlights skills as a priority?
Specific digital skills?
Yeah, the demand for digital skills and the importance of it.
I think for each organization, what they need to do is work out what are the key skills that they need. So it will be different organization to organization. So if you're in, engineering, right, then digital will be less important than engineering. If you're in professional services, it may be different. So, not every skill in your organization is critical. I think it's about, identifying what are the critical skills that you need, and then making sure you've got the right pipeline of those. And that may change over time, but I think that's the best start point.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. Maybe one last takeaway and then we'll close.
Thanks. One of the things I want to consider is, does the skills revolution allow us to do wargaming as opposed to succession planning? So put scenarios at a skill level. If we look at the supply chain challenges we all suffer from now, whether it's the Suez blockage, Shanghai lockdown, Ukraine war, the supply chain's under constant threat and change. I think the skills opportunity allows us to do much more scenario-based planning to really test how we as an organization can flex and throw different scenarios, almost a wargaming scenario, so move succession to wargaming.
Excellent. And not to plug my own LinkedIn account, but I wrote an article about the 10 most common scenarios for war games planning. So there you go. Anyway, look, we're way over time. Amazed how fast that went, actually. We're way over time. So I would suggest you share your stories with each other that we asked you to talk to each other about in the session. But it is going to be networking drinks coming up now.